How y'all doing, folks? Welcome to this edition of the Outdoors Bound podcast. I'm George Noleff. Glad you could be with us. There we go. This is the time of year when fishing just goes off the chain. We're talking everything all at once. I talked with my buddy Dwayne Lamb at Indian Point Marina Bait and Tackle about what's biting right now at Smith Mountain Lake. He says largemouth bass are staging near where they're going to spawn, and they are eating. 8 feet of water or less in back bays and creek arms, drop shots or wacky rigs if you want to finesse them, square bills if you want to fish them fast. Now, shad are moving in shallow. That means stripers are coming up into the riprap after dark. Dwayne suggests bucktails, hit sticks, or F-18s to take those fish. Finally, crappies are setting up for the spawn around brush and structure. Dwayne says minnows under a bobber or small jigs are going to help you fill a stringer. The muskies are coming off the spawn and they are hungry. Better gear up because May is traditionally a hot month for muskies on the James and the New.
May, the last couple of years, has absolutely been insane for muskie fishing. Last year, I ran 23 muskie trips in the month of May, and we boated a fish, at least one fish on every trip, and a lot of those trips we had multiple fish. I like to use heavy action bait casting rods. Anywhere from 7.5 to 8.5 feet. One of the things I've learned over the years is even though my raft is 15 feet, so it's not like a big jet boat or anything. So you got some limited space in the boat, but the longer rods actually help you when you have to when you might get in a situation where you have to do the figure eight, because you don't have to lean over and put your knees on the side of the boat and reach down. But 7.5 to 8 foot. Heavy action. I like the big bait casting reels. I use 80 to 100 pound braided line with a 100-pound fluorocarbon leader. And I've talked about this. You and I have talked about it many times, and you've experienced it yourself. Where my buddy Dennis Perko for Perko Lures, he makes muskie lures, and I use those probably 95% of the time. He's an artist. His paint schemes are fantastic. And the cool thing, and I know that's a big trend in the muskie business for custom baits. But when I have him make baits for me, it's like I have the only one. He might do some other production of those baits, but you might look at a couple of his baits and say, well, it's got the same paint job and everything. But there could be also a difference because he adds what's called micro balloons into the resin. And what the micro balloons do, the more micro balloons creates more buoyancy in the bait. The less, it has a faster sink rate. So you might have two baits that look exactly the same, but one has a faster sink rate than the other. I like the slower sink rates because I like to get those baits like right in front of the fish.
That's my buddy Rob Englund of Appalachian Bronze Bag Adventures. He guides muskies on the James. And while muskie fishing comes down to persistence in a lot of cases, one of the top muskie anglers in the country, Stephen Paul, says, make full use of your electronics to help even the odds.
Using all of these tools to elevate your muskie fishing game is superbly important. Now, a lot of anglers will go and they'll go to Cabela's or go to Bass Pro Shop and they'll buy, a $2,000 piece of electronics and they don't learn it. If you're going to add that to your muskie fishing game, learn everything there is to use it, but that unit. A tool is only as good as the user, so learn everything there is. That's going to help elevate your game. Having structural knowledge, understanding the type of structures that are going to pull in bait fish, therefore actively feeding predators. So if we're using electronics to the best of our ability, we're using a structural minded process to find positive areas to target, it makes our job easier.
But also it helps to enhance the experience on the water too, because it keeps you engaged. You're not just throwing deadheaded.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's one of these things of if you want to go out and have this day on the water where you're just kind of blasé and you're just pitching, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're sort of actively engaged in throughout the entire process, it's a little bit of a mental game, right? So what am I seeing on the down scan? What am I seeing? Is our boat position perfect? Are we positioned perfectly for the contours and structure that we're targeting, or the cover that might be in place? So there's a lot of things going on that makes it it's not an arbitrary activity. It's not something that, if you want to really elevate to that next level, you have to be engaged in all phases of the game, if you will.
From freshwater to salt, if you want the chance to catch a giant and partake in a Virginia delicacy, now's the time to head to the coast and target black drum. Black drum move into the surf on the eastern shore every April. The fish get big. They can grow up to 5 feet long and weigh 100 pounds. Here's the thing, they aren't difficult to catch. Basic surf gear and bottom rigs, and you're in business. Just ask Jimmy Vassalou of Captain Steve's Bait and Tackle in Chincoteague.
We have some high-low rigs. There's circle hook rigs. They're double hook rigs, Captain Steve's 7/0 circle hook rigs. Use clam, crab, and sand fleas, and we generally tip them with fish bites. Clam, crab, or sand fleas favor. They eat more crustaceans. Every once in a while they eat a fish too, so don't be afraid to use different baits.
The technique is nothing fancy, bottom fishing, but you do have to pay attention to how fresh your bait is.
Change your baits every 15-20 minutes and vary your cast too, because a lot of people keep the same bait out there for hours and you're not going to catch too much. You might get lucky and catch something, but your bait's probably going to be gone by then.
So what do you do with those drum? Well, the fillets are tasty and are good fried, grilled, broiled, or used in chowders. But if you want to make like an Eastern Shore native, cut the ribs out, bread them, and deep fry them. I had them for the first time recently at a place called Ray's Shanty over near Chincoteague. Folks, all I can say is they are delicious, life-changing even. Black drum will be in Virginia waters heavy for about another month. Let's talk a little turkey. We are in the heart of the spring turkey season. We know that the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources has had teams in the field conducting surveys while the hunt's going on. No word on harvest numbers yet, but I have heard from a number of hunters in various areas around our region that they just aren't hearing as much gobbling as they used to. They know the birds are there, they just aren't making a lot of noise. So I decided to do a little research to find out why that might be happening. Turns out biologists have observed the same thing. It happens in areas where hunters target the most aggressive birds. Now, those turkeys also tend to be the loudest. A study done in 3 southern states found you get a genetic selection in that case. The quiet birds don't get hunted, they survive and reproduce, and their offspring tend to gobble on the roost, but not as much on the ground. Is that what's going on here? Might be. We'll keep on checking. Have you ever been to Assateague Island? Well, if you haven't, Assateague is home to a herd of wild ponies. Its seashore's wild, natural, and undeveloped. You really need to get out there and check it out. The other place I love is just across the channel, Chincoteague Island. It holds a treasured place in our rich Virginia wild horse heritage, but recently we were at risk of losing part of it. The Chincoteague Pony Swim, part of our rich Virginia heritage, made world famous in the Misty books by author Marguerite Henry. Much of the Misty legend happened in a real place, the BB Ranch on Chincoteague Island. At this time last year, what was left of the ranch was in question. The family wanted to sell it, developers wanted to buy it, and the Museum of Chincoteague wanted to preserve it. Preservation won out.
So I think we're going to replicate that up on the top here. Unbelievable dream come true.
That's Cindy Faith. She's the executive director of the museum. It was donations from thousands of people around the world that made the purchase possible. Faith says love of horses and a love for the books of Marguerite Henry are what fueled those donations to save the ranch.
Gosh, Marguerite Henry, what a great author. She just really knew how to write a story where kids can just feel a part of it. The books are well written, the pictures are beautiful, and stories are timeless, so we couldn't be luckier.
All that love she had in her heart for horses and ponies, but Misty was the first one.
And if you want to find some of those people whose love for the Chincoteague ponies helped preserve a part of history, all you have to do is swing by the museum. They visit there every day. People like Leanne Schneider. She came all the way from Illinois just to experience the place where Misty lived.
This was a bucket list thing for me. I normally travel out west, but this is somewhere I've always wanted to see. This Chincoteague, where Misty came from.
So now the renovation work started. AJ Savage is one of the folks working on the project.
Put a couple up here.
He grew up nearby, remembers reading the books and watching the movie. He says restoring history is special.
I used to watch it when I was a kid, when I was at North Accomack Elementary School. In Miss Jones' class, we used to watch it back then. So it's pretty awesome.
Eventually, sometime in the next year, the ranch is going to be open for public visits so people can explore history, Misty's history, And that, says Cindy Faith, is when the real excitement is going to start.
If Misty only knew, right? Yes. No, nobody would ever know. Nobody living here at that time could have possibly imagined 80 years later what people would be saying and thinking about a book that was written about the island. It's really mind-blowing.
Now, the plan is to restore the ranch house and rebuild a barn lost to fire and eventually set up a classroom and learning center. And one section of the house is going to be highlighted. It's the kitchen, where in 1962, Misty was brought into the house to escape flooding from a huge storm. And although Misty's been gone for 52 years, you can still see some of her descendants at the ranch. But since we're on the shore, let's stay there for this week's 30 Seconds of Solitude and the sounds of the surf. Man, that makes me want to grab my surf fishing gear and head for the beach. Until next week, folks, I'm George Noleff, WFXR News Outdoors Bound. Tight lines and good hunting, y'all.
You build the mountains in your dreams. You lead the world so you can breathe. Whoa. You walk on fields inside your mind. You cross the oceans and the skies. Whoa. It's like you found a better way. Don't fight them all on what they say. Just turn around and walk away. But if you leave again, just take me there with you. But if you leave again, just take me there.